Okay, so the very first step is to know your production system. So what is your production system? We talked about this, that the first thing that you need to know is what is the output that you're generating from the last video. This is the slide from the last video. So everyone in your team or your company essentially is producing something. So you need to know what system they're working in and what are they producing. So let's take an example of understanding a production system. A prison production system. What is a prison's production system, right? A prison's production system essentially has this function. Its function is to find all criminals and produce the output of putting them into a jail. So that's a production system or a criminal production system, right? Maybe a prison criminal production system. That's the optimization function for them, is to find criminals and put them into jail. So what would it look like? It would look something like this. The steps into this production system is someone first gets arrested, then there is a booking, a charge, and then there is some sort of discovery, whether there is a real criminal or not. Then it's an early resolution. You try to find some conviction around it, and you get folks to provide witnesses, and then there is indictment, and then eventually there is a trial, and then there is a sentencing, right? So this entire production system can be broken down into these steps. Similarly, each of these steps are necessary for you to know. If you want to optimize for putting criminals into jail quickly, then you need to know what are these big blocks of the system and what is the drop-off. You may be amazed to find out that it takes about $100,000 to keep someone into jail. So you need to have space for them, food, clothing, shelter for a year. But it takes $1 million to get them convicted. So if this system is not optimum, and if it's not optimized for the right system, which is to optimize for this function, then you would have all kinds of issues. So knowing your production system, putting those big blocks into a paper is the very first step for you to know what you're going to go after. In my case, I work in software. So there is coding, which is you write software, then you do various kinds of tests. And then you integrate that software into existing code base, integrating in that into existing software, and then you write more tests to check whether it's actually working. And then you deliver that to production, which basically means to your real users or customers. So having known these steps, it is very important for me to know at what steps do I need to do what kind of tests? Where are the bottlenecks, right? So if I were to break this into more granular diagram, it would be something like this. The first step is to write the software, put it into version control system, and then you build it. And then you do static analysis and see if there's no issues, and run tests, unit tests, make sure that it's not regressing, and then many more steps until it actually gets to the users. And then you repeat these steps. So if I know these steps, then I know what would it take to ship code to production or deploy software. So this kind of a breakdown is needed for you to know where are the bottlenecks in your system. Once you know that this step is the one that's causing maximum pain to our developers or software engineers, then you would probably find that you will spend most of your time fixing that. So knowing what are the subcomponents, putting in right measurements across each of those subcomponents, and then finding out which is the long pole, what is the bottleneck in your system, is super essential and the very first thing that you need to do as a leader to understand your system. And you will also quickly realize that sometimes the bottleneck is here and then it shifts here as you start deploying more and more code. Then deployment becomes a bottleneck. Sometimes the development team becomes a bottleneck because you have many things ready. So the bottleneck shifts. So only if you understand your system, the big components, and if you have appropriate tests to catch issues in the early stages, that you'll be able to ship quickly and you'll be able to detect if there is an issue. So the main idea behind putting this into a paper or understanding your production system is to understand your bottlenecks. So you need to know very clearly what measurements are way off than what it should be, what is the step that you need to optimize around, what is it that you need to work backwards from. Once you do that, you will also quickly realize that you need to add in the right tests so that you catch issues as early as possible. Because let's say you catch issues here, then only this step needs to be redone. If you catch issues here, all of these steps need to be redone. And if you catch issues all the way here, everything has to be redone. So it gets costly over time if you catch issues at a later stage. So knowing your bottlenecks, having the right measurements, and catching those issues with right level of testing, be it unit tests, system tests, integration tests, functional tests, any kind of test that you need. Figure that out. But it starts with this understanding. So to quickly summarize, you first need to know your production system. What is it? What is the factory, as Andy calls it in his book in this first chapter? What is the factory that you're running? What are the big pieces? What output are you generating? The output could be code that is shipped. Output could be features that you deploy. Output could be criminals that you put behind the prison. You need to know what is the output that you're producing and who's producing that output. And you need to know, ideally on a paper, as to what's going on. And ideally you need to have measurements put in. Then you will quickly realize that there are bottlenecks, and then you'll quickly work backwards. When you come up with a plan, you will work around your bottlenecks to make sure you optimize around them. You will find issues and trade-offs around scheduling, quality, and cost, right? Which is the three pick two kind of a situation. You can have time or quick schedule at high cost and low quality bugs, or you'll have more bugs with quick schedule of delivery with many more people. So you need to understand what the trade-offs you're getting into, but it starts with knowing your production system. Once you know your production systems, you'll measure out, you'll make sure that it is robust, you will identify the bottlenecks, you will optimize the bottlenecks, you'll work around the bottlenecks, and you will get a much deeper understanding of not only your system, but you will make it better over time. All right, thank you.